Rebecca Hayes, former recipient of the Midnight Mission Family Housing Project, HomeLight. I first found out about the Midnight Mission through a 12-step program. So I had gotten sober here in Los Angeles, and one of the meetings I was going to, there were other people from the mission that went there, and it was all over in my 12-step group. And then people in recovery, where I got sober as well, would bring meetings to the Midnight Mission and have what's called a panel, and basically just share their experience, strength, and hope with how they got sober, and or what it was like, what happened, and what it's like currently. So I mean, it was just all around where I got sober, hearing about the mission. I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I was heavy in my addiction. I lived on the streets of Seattle, actually, which is where I'm from, and so my addiction took me. I crossed every single line that I said I would never cross, and one of those was, I ended up homeless on the streets for many years, and never in a million years thought that would be my life. Through the helps of the courts, I got on methadone, and then I had my son, Michael, who was born addicted to methadone, ended up in Los Angeles for various reasons. Basically, I lost everything again because I started drinking while I was on the methadone and doing all kinds of other drugs, and ended up in Los Angeles because my mom lives here. And, I hit bottom here in Los Angeles with this beautiful, innocent little boy. And I ended up going to a 12-step program, and thank God I got sober. I got off the methadone and got off of everything. But I had a lot of wreckage because of my disease, my addiction. And one of those was homelessness. My mom was living in transitional housing, not transitional housing, but she was on Section 8. And so she couldn't have anyone stay with her. So I was looking for a place to live, had nowhere to go. And so I moved into transitional housing. There was 27 people in a 3-bedroom house. It was completely illegal. But I had nowhere else to go. And so I stayed there for 9 months, and I actually got invited to do a panel when I had 6 months sober through the 12-step program that I was attending, and came to the Midnight Mission to do a panel, and I was sharing my experience, and I was trying to relate with the guys here, right? Like at the time it was only guys, and I was telling them about my experience of living with all these people in this house. There was a person in that panel who was working for the Midnight Mission, and she just happened to be there, and she came up to me afterwards and asked if I had ever heard of HomeLight, and I had never heard of it. I knew that the Midnight Mission was here, obviously, and that there were guys that were attending meetings that I went to and that were getting sober and changing their lives around, but I never knew that there was anything for single parents. And she told me about this program, and of course I was interested. She's the one who really advocated for me and got me in charge of, or not in charge, but introduced me to the people that could get me in the doors of the Midnight Mission, and Ricardo being one of them. And so I interviewed for them, and I got accepted, and I couldn't believe it. This place was awesome. I mean, it was a gated community. It was completely safe for my son and I. It was our own 1-bedroom apartment. The apartments were huge, where my son and I can just live by ourselves and have some sort of normalcy. Work, they want you to work and or go to school, and then you put 70% of your income aside, and you get all of that back when you leave. I mean, it was quite an opportunity. And I think I was there for 20 months. I can't remember exactly how long I was there, but it was a significant amount of time. But during that time, I was able to, I started researching what can I do to become self-sufficient, because up to this point I had no skills. I was a high school dropout. I had drank my way out of everything, and had no way to support myself legally. Ricardo actually told me about, why don't you become an ultrasound tech? Like, they make quite a bit of money, right? So while I was doing this research about ultrasound tech, surge tech came up, surgical technologist came up. And I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. And so I started school with that, and I was able to complete the education. It was through a trade school. I was able to graduate while I was in Midnight Mission, and then I moved out. And then, of course, the sum of money that they gave me really set my son and I up to be able to move to our own apartment, which was life-changing. I mean, I don't think it had been a long time since I had a place that I could actually call my own. And actually, my credit was so bad. And I still had some pretty recent criminal convictions too. So it was hard for me to find a place. But one of the board members here owned some apartment buildings and actually helped me, and took a chance on me, and helped me, had my son and I move into his place. So really, I mean, this place set me up for a lot, really helped change my life. And I don't know, I don't know where I would be without the help from the Midnight Mission, really. Looking back on it now, it moves me how much they invested in me and believed in me. And not only me, I'm not unique, but everyone in here, they want to see people here succeed, and they want to pour into them. And if you're taking the action and you're really trying to change your life, there is nothing that there's no resource that they won't try and give you, or opportunity to make your life better. And you have to put in the work. I mean, you definitely have to do your part, but there's so many people that will back you up here. And I can't say thank you enough, really. I really can't. It's changed my son and my life, being here and having a safe place to go, and just being able to focus on education and recovery was quite a deal to do that. So yeah. That was 2012 when I got into the mission. I heard about Skid Row running club. So I had never been a runner in my life ever. And I remember Ricardo he was helped putting on a run, and he was promoting this run. It was a 5:10K to help raise money and awareness for the Skid Row Running Club, which had been started, I think, a year previously, right, from the judge. The judge was taking people to Ghana, Africa, and there was only, I think he took 3 runners out there, and he wanted to, like I said, create some awareness. And Ricardo was talking about this 5K, right? And like I said, I'd never been a runner before, but I really wanted to support the mission because they had changed my life, So I was like, oh, I'm totally going to do this. And so I remember I started, training on a treadmill. And I remember the first time I ran a mile, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then I run this 5K, and it was electrifying. I couldn't believe it, like the energy and just being able to accomplish that. It just felt like it was a big deal for me, right? And I heard some of these guys' stories at like the gala that they have, and so I mean, I've heard, like David's story, and I thought, man, these guys, wow, coming from that and then running a marathon, like that is really inspiring. And I just wanted to be a part of that. And so me and one of the guys, another guy, Ryan, who was actually, he was working for the mission and also was currently in the mission and part of the running team as well, started training me. I asked him to train me, and I think Ricardo introduced me to him as well. And Ryan and I started running together, and he started training me with 6 miles and 7 miles, and I remember 9 miles, and then we ran like a half marathon, and that's the first time that I met the judge, although I wasn't part of the running team yet. And I just thought it was really cool. And then I ran the LA Marathon. And I remember when I ran the marathon, like I literally felt like I was being carried by angels. There wasn't a dry eye. I just couldn't believe that I came from where I came from, and here I was running a marathon. I just couldn't believe it. And then I finished. And when I finished the marathon, I was with Ryan, and Ryan was part of the team, like I previously mentioned. And he invited me to go have dinner in the judges' chambers, which I thought was really cool. Coming from where I come from, being able to go to a judges' chamber and have dinner, with all the other runners from the team. And so that was the first time that I actually got introduced to the team. And I just remember everyone as a whole was that night in the judges' chamber after the marathon. And the camaraderie was incredible. There wasn't a separation, even though there was judges and attorneys and entrepreneurs and, so many people that on paper are completely different from the people that are in the program, right? But in the judges' chamber and in running, like we were equal. No one treated anyone any below, or, we were equal. And that blew me away. And so I wanted to be a part of that camaraderie. I wanted to, it was just awesome. And so I started running with these guys, and I loved it. I was hooked, and I ended up running with them in Rome, Italy, which was amazing to be able to do that. I mean, it was life-changing. Running the LA Marathon was life-changing. I knew if I could run a marathon, I could do anything. And then I ended up running the Seattle Marathon, and I ran the Seattle Marathon 3 times. And then I ended up going to Barcelona on my own. And then I ran Ecuador with these guys. And so I ran a total of 7 marathons. And Actually, I find out today if I get accepted to the New York Marathon. So I'm hoping that I got in the lottery for that. So it really changed my life. The running team is amazing. Back then there was few people when I started running with them, and then it's just grown. I mean, I couldn't believe, I ran with them today and I couldn't believe there's so many people. It's great. It's great. And what I love about it is that even though I don't know most of the people that run with them, I felt like there was still that connection. And there was still like, hey man, good job. We were supporting each other. And I have no idea if that person is a police officer or part of the person here. No idea. And I don't care. It's just, all of that's gone. And we're just supporting each other and cheering each other on and carrying that out in what we do in our everyday lives, So yeah, running team changed my life. It was, yeah. And honestly, when I was in my addiction, my world was like a block radius. I worked on the streets. I lived on the streets, everything that went along with that as a woman on the streets. And it was a nightmare. And so I never in a million years thought that my life would end up there. And, with my 12-step program, Ricardo's love and help and support in HomeLight and giving us a secure place to live and being able to get an education. And then the running team, like those three things, they gave me the confidence to know that I could do anything and that my past could turn into an asset instead of a barrier, and really kind of helped change that thinking and use those skills of survival into something positive. And then it was time for me to move to Seattle. It's where I came from. And the only reason why I was in LA was because of my addiction anyway. So I ended up getting a job in Seattle working as a surgical technologist. And so with that, I was able to really become self-supporting. And I ended up renting a cute little house for my son and I. And fast forward a couple of years, I got married and actually bought my own home. Well, definitely my sponsor, Yvonne. She took my son and I. My son was 2.5 years old and neurotic because of my addiction. And, she took us under her wing and just really spoon-fed me recovery and really helped me lay out a strong foundation in my recovery. And I think it mushroomed from that. The person who got me into HomeLight, I can't say thank you enough that person stuck her neck out and talked to Ricardo for me. I can't thank her enough, for doing that, because that, like I said, changed my life. And then of course, Ricardo, who always believed in me and poured life into me, and would speak these things and like, you can do this. And, just really believed in me and just, believed that I could be self-supporting at some point if I put the work in. And of course, the guys from the running team, man, knowing where they came from, because I had been there too. And some of them, some of their stories are just horrific. And here they are rebuilding their lives, like that, motivating. It's just like, here we are changing our lives and we're doing it. And seeing them doing it inspired me, and me doing it inspired them, and we inspired each other. And it was incredible. Yeah. In 2019, so I've been a surgical technologist for 10 years now, working up in Seattle for 9 years, worked in one hospital for 5 years and then another hospital for 4. Being able to, surgical, it was hard. It was really hard. It was not an easy field to get into. I was really grandiose in my thinking, of like, oh, it just sounds cool, but I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. But I overcame that and I didn't give up. And what ended up happening was I became really good at my job. And it wasn't because I was the best. It was because I showed up and I did what I was taught. My sponsor, Yvonne, always told me to show up with work with, see where you can be of service, see where you can act in love. And so I would go and I would start lifting those up around me. And I became one of their lead preceptors. So I was the one who taught the nurses how to scrub. And I was the one who taught, the new graduates and the students. But I decided I wanted to get an education. I wanted to further my education. And so in 2019, I went to school to become an RN. And I just graduated. So I'm now an RN. And not only that, but I graduated with honors. And so there was 3 of us in our class that got to wear the cords. And my dad pinned me. So we get pinned and we say the Florence Nightingale pledge. My dad was there and pinned me, and my son was there, and so that was quite an accomplishment. And I love being a nurse because I see people that are just so broken and have just been where I've been. And a lot of people in the medical field, they just don't know, and there's a judgment and a stigma that happens with homelessness and drug addiction. And if God had the grace to save me, that God can save this person too, or higher power, whatever, something, and that no one is too far gone. No one is too far gone. I mean, there were days where I'd been up all night and I'd been taking like meth and heroin, and and I'm the person talking to myself and screaming, and I have been that person. I have been that person. I have been on the streets hustling with no shoes on. I have been that person, and look what's happened. And so I don't believe anyone is out of reach for recovery, and not only recovery, but to be able to thrive and have a decent life. You just got to believe in them, and they just need direction. And of course, they need to put the action into and want to do it, and they got to get to that point to where they want to do it. I love being a nurse for that reason. And now I get to be the person that's frontline caring for individuals that are really, in the most vulnerable, crappiest part of their lives, right? I would say to remain humble. Being in a situation where you have to rely on others for help is hard. Taking advice from other people is hard. But just realizing that I was my ways, obviously there was something broken with the way I was doing things, because I wasn't getting good results, right? And that maybe there's people that know how to live life, and that I need to humble myself and follow their direction and actually utilize it. And then also, this didn't happen overnight. I became an RN. I've been sober for 12 years. It wasn't overnight. And I was on food stamps and working as a barista with $9 an hour. And it took 4 years until I became self-supporting. So don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Hold on to the beauty around you, even though the wreckage is really high and it feels like it's never, ever, ever going to go away. It will. It will. It will. It just takes time.